right, welcome to the way it should be. I'm JD.
Hey, I'm Dean.
And today we have Chase Oliver. Tell us about yourself.
So I am a candidate for President of the United States with the Libertarian Party. I served as the Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate in Georgia last year, where I forced a runoff between Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock, creating national news and attention for the Libertarian Party. And I want to continue that momentum forward in the 2024 election and provide voters a real alternative to the two-party system they can feel good about. Got my start as an anti-war activist. More recently, I've gotten involved in pro-immigration and police accountability activism, and I've continued to be an enthusiastic voice for liberty since I joined the Libertarian Party way back in 2010. So a little bit about my background there, but thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming, man. That's we were watching a video about that Senate campaign. That's pretty neat that you were able to pull that off. They were the two major parties were real worried about you screwing everything up for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I became the most hated man in Georgia for about 4 weeks when I caused that runoff, and of course refused to endorse either of the major party candidates because neither of them deserved my endorsement. I gave them both an opportunity to participate in a forum. Actually, I said, if you want to earn those voters, sit down with me, and we'll get it with a member of the media. We'll get it televised, and you can tell the voters why they should come out and support you. And neither of them took me up on that offer. And as we see, Herschel Walker ended up losing that election. So maybe they should have taken me up on the offer and actually sat down and told libertarians why they should have gotten their vote in the runoff.
Yeah, exactly. Herschel Walker should have. Like everybody's saying that he was gonna. Well, he had a chance to win. I don't know. I never thought he really stood a chance of winning, but they were really pushing him.
Well, that was their candidate that that side of the duopoly chose. I don't think he was obviously the best candidate, which is one of the reasons why I was very happy to run against him. But ultimately, I think it was great about providing voters in Georgia a choice they could feel good about, particularly those Second Amendment voters who didn't want to vote for Herschel Walker, who was so irresponsible, holding his wife up at gunpoint in his book. I was able to say, I'm a gun owner, a gun lover, and I'm not one who's going to be irresponsible with that. So I was able to provide that alternative to so many voters who are very dissatisfied with both candidates. And I want to do the same thing in 2024. I know voters are extremely dissatisfied with the idea of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden 2.0. Sure. And so I want to make sure that we as the Libertarian Party are providing the best alternative to them. And I do think my campaign is the campaign to do that.
Yeah.
So you said you joined in 2010, the Libertarian Party in 2010. What initially brought you to the Libertarian Party?
Yeah, it's the same thing that initially brought me into politics to begin with. It was I was an anti-war voter. That's what got me started politically active. It's because I had, I was in high school when 9/11 occurred. It was friends of mine from high school who were getting sent to Afghanistan and Iraq to fight in this war. And so I became an anti-war activist. Now, I didn't know about the Libertarian Party at the time, and because George Bush was a Republican, I just kind of reflexively became a Democrat. Even though I was a gun-loving Democrat, I was like a cut taxes Democrat. That got me a lot of weird looks in rooms of Democrats, but because they were opposing Bush, I was like, I guess this is where I'm supposed to be. It was only after Obama won election, which, a lot of anti-war voters fought for him to be elected because he said he was going to talk to our enemies and close Gitmo and stop the drone bombs. And it's when
he was going to end
the
wars in
all
Iraq.
of those promises.
I'm sorry.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so he didn't do any of that. He talked the talk, did not walk the walk, but still got a Nobel Peace Prize. And when that happened, I was just like, I can't be a part of this party anymore. And so I just happened to be at the Atlanta Pride Festival. You'll see the Rainbow Gadsden behind me there. I was just chilling at the Atlanta Pride Festival, and the Libertarian Party of Georgia was there. And literally their candidate for governor, John Mons, waved me into the tent, saw me looking at me. He's like, get over here. I got to talk to you. And he asked me, what is the most important thing to you as a libertarian or as a person? I bet you're more libertarian than you realize. And I said, and I'll never forget this, I said, I oppose the war on terror and the war in Iraq with every fiber of my being. And the next words out of John Mons' mouth were, welcome home to the Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
And I've been here ever since. I've grown within the party. And he didn't gatekeep me either. He didn't say, well, what's your opinion on this issue or that issue? He said, you're anti-war. That's good enough. get here in the tent, sit down, talk to these other people, and see how your anti-war philosophy actually matches up with the libertarian philosophy. And it allowed me to grow within the party. And because of that, I'm now like a minarchist, you know? So I went from being a Democratic voter to a minarchist because the party allowed me that room to grow. And I want to do that same thing as our presidential candidate. If you broadly agree that government's too big or too abusive or hurting people, then get in this tent, sit down with us libertarians. I guess what? You're going to become a more hardcore libertarian as you come along. But we have to allow you in the room to sit down with us and have that discourse. Exactly. And we have to be able to defend our principles in that way with that discourse. And I think that's how we can get new libertarians and a lot of new energy in the party. And that's really my goal for 2024 is to reignite the next generation of libertarians.
That's awesome. I got a question something along the anti-war stuff. There are some, like the Cato crowd is still pushing the support for Ukraine and the Ukrainian wars. Where do you stand on things like that?
You know, I'll be frank, I'm somebody who doesn't believe that the military solution is what the United States needs to be pushing for. Mm-hmm. I think if our European friends over there who feel more directly threatened by Russia want to put military resources behind it, that's their nation, that's their resources, they can do that. I believe we've been propping up NATO in terms of funding far more than they have for a long time, so I think military solution is going to come from somewhere. It needs to come from them, not us. Yep. And really, what the United States needs to be doing is putting our eye on the humanitarian aid. In terms of, if you want to get out of Ukraine, allow you to come here as a refugee so you can get these innocent women and children and non-fighting combatants outside of the war zone while these two governments fight each other. I would also make that same offer to any member of the Russian military who's been conscripted into battle. Yeah. If you're in Ukraine, get the heck out of there, come here to declare amnesty, and we'll get you the heck out of there so you don't have to fight this war that you're conscripted into as well. I think ultimately that would reduce the Russian morale too. It would probably push them back across their own border and hopefully have a peace agreement coming out of that. That's what I would like to see. But I don't think the United States needs to take a military role in that at all. I think we've obviously already given hundreds of billions of dollars to this fight. I don't think it's going to be in the best interest of the United States to certainly continue that policy, or should it have ever been the policy to begin with. Yeah. I think humanitarian policy is where we need to be leading the way. And, frankly, I do see that as the mainstream of the Libertarian Party. There might be some people who do disagree with that and are still libertarian, but I don't believe that's the mainstream discourse of libertarian thought. And I'm happy to support that anti-war position 100%. I'm anti-war to the core. And so the only reason I think the military should ever be engaged in fighting is when we're directly attacked or threatened by an outside force. That's the purpose of our military, is to protect us from a sovereign invasion from the minarchist perspective.
So I guess the same thing holds for what's going on in Israel too. Keep the U.S. out.
Oh, absolutely. But there is one thing that I do think we need to be saying to Israel, which is something that should have been said to us after 9/11, which is maybe this response that you're taking to this, very real terror attack that happened, right? Yep. October 7th was horrible for the people of Israel. But somebody maybe needs to tell them that this response they're having is going to create blowback. It is not going to create more peace in the region, and they need to think about a different way to combat Hamas than airstrikes that are killing so many innocent people. I mean, far more innocent Gazans have now died at this point than Israelis did on October the 7th. It's like, when does the scale tip and equal out to the nation of Israel? Like, we need to be telling our partner, they're friends with us, right? Yeah. Ostensibly, they've been our allies since its creation. Mm-hmm. We should be able to tell our ally, this is the wrong way to do this. This is not the way to create peace in the region. And ultimately, that's all I pray for every day, is that there's peace between those two parties. But the United States can't force that meeting. They can't set those terms. They can't do that because, frankly, any effort for us to do that will be seen as one side of us putting our thumb on the scale for the other. And, we can't have the role in that position. That has to be something that is done by the Israelis, by the Palestinians. But, if we're going to, and I do believe, Israel was attacked. If we were attacked in such a way, we would expect some sort of response. But airstriking innocent kids, Justin Amash's cousin is dead. He's an infant.
Really?
Right? There's hundreds and hundreds, thousands of innocent people who have now died in the region who had nothing to do with Hamas. And so I have to say, Israel, there has to be a better way to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
Because otherwise, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And I wish somebody had said the same thing in the United States, so we hadn't gone to war in Afghanistan for 20 years and gone to war in Iraq.
Ron Paul was up there preaching that, but nobody cared to listen to him, unfortunately.
Him and then Barbara Lee was literally the only
That's
member
it.
of Congress who voted against the war.
That's
The
it.
only one. She was the one who stood up, and she's now saying that we need to have a ceasefire in Israel. So I can disagree with her on like 90% of her policies because she's a California Democrat.
Yeah.
But on that, we can agree.
Well, yeah. So jumping topics here a little bit. What do you think? What do you bring different for the nomination to the LP nomination than maybe some of the others running against you?
Yeah, well, there's I've had practice in being a candidate before. I've run a statewide campaign that earned national news and attention, so I do have that electoral record that I think my other opponents do not have. I also have the energy and enthusiasm to run as a full-time candidate. I've already run and campaigned in 40 out of the 50 states. By the time we get to convention, I'll have campaigned in all 50 states, speaking with libertarians and other voters in every state in the union. And why do I think that's important? Because I think it's important to show the delegates in real time that our candidate for president has the energy, the enthusiasm, and the get out and go attitude to reach out to voters all over the country. And in fact, I learned this. There has not been a candidate for president for the Libertarian Party, pre or post nomination, that has visited all 50 states.
Oh, wow.
And so I think it's important to break that glass ceiling to show how serious we are as a party to reaching out and being the real alternative to this broken duopoly that exists. And so I am taking that as a goal to make sure that I reach out to libertarians all across the country. And I'm somebody who wants to be a conciliator. I am not fighting internal fights at all. I'm not representing one wing of the party or the other. In fact, so much that I'm not going to be endorsing any internal party offices. I won't be endorsing platform or bylaw changes. I leave that to the delegates. I believe that the delegates can do that themselves. My job is to reach outward and be a candidate and show in real time what a presidential campaign can look like when Chase Oliver's at the top of the ticket. And that's what I'm doing. We're professionally branded. We have an amazing comms team. We have hundreds of volunteers all over the country. We have a professional fundraising setup. Like, we are running right now, even on the shoestring budget that a libertarian primary would provide us, right? Compared to the general, we are already running full steam ahead. So what happens when the full party and the full power of this party gets behind this campaign is we're going to skyrocket. And so that is maybe what differentiates me, is like when I got into this, I formed an exploratory committee at the beginning just to see what the possibility was. I got amazing feedback, and from the day I announced, it has been full steam ahead, and it will be all the way through November 2024 and beyond. Win, lose, or draw, my other promise to the party is here's two things. A, I'm going to delineate data directly to state parties, because last time in 2020, the campaign, the Joe Jorgensen campaign, did give that information to national, and they kind of sat on it. They didn't do anything with that data in real time. So we're going to decentralize that data out to all 50 state parties so they have the data. They know what to do with it. They can advertise these things because they know their community a lot better than the national centralized party in D.C. And that's what we need to be doing. That's part of our libertarian principles, too, of decentralization. Right. So we're going to be sharing that data in real time. And then the day after Election Day, my job is to start reaching out to the millions of voters that we've added to our rolls and connect them with their local affiliate. And if they don't have a local affiliate, help them get started to form one so we can be affiliated all over the country and we can have a formal, organized political entity that exists to run and elect libertarians all over the country. That's what we need to do all over the country, and with a great presidential campaign, we can really get it done. And so that's my message to the delegates, is let's really professionalize our operation so we can set up our party for success 2 years, 4 years, 20 years from now. That's what we need to be doing.
See, that's fantastic, because we've talked to a couple of the other candidates, and we asked them, like, what is your plan to grow the party? Like, how I mean, you're the face of the party at this moment when you get the nomination to run for president. Okay, so not only are you trying to win the campaign, but you're also trying to get yourself out there, to present yourself to voters, to grow the party. And most of them had, like, pretty generic plans. That's really awesome what you just said. Like, you sound like you have a really concrete plan on how to actually not just try to win the campaign, but also grow the party, which is what we need more than anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, me and my team think every day about how we can make more success in the party, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you had said, you're essentially, with the nomination, you're the brand ambassador.
Yeah.
Like you had said, yeah.
I say chief brand officer, but brand ambassador is the
Yeah,
exact.
chief brand
Yeah,
officer.
exactly.
That's
Sounds
way better. Yeah. Well, so I'm going to scratch that one out because you just answered my question for me. So get down to, I guess, some of the just to be off the wall kind of questions here and there. One of the questions that I've asked before, what are your thoughts? I mean, I know some of the party differs on some of them, like the unions in the private sector. And if you want, we could go into unions in the public sector too. And what you're, that kind of seems like it varies some within the party on unions.
Yeah, public sector unions, of course, I'm going to oppose because they already have the monopoly of the state backing them up. It's kind of a different situation. But as far as private unions, I have 3 brothers who all have been working within the electrical union here in Georgia. Now, Georgia's a right-to-work state. You're not required to join a union. I don't believe you should be required to join a union in the private sector. But here's what I think. Your labor is capital, right? Your labor has value to it, and you should be able, in the private marketplace, in the free market, to combine your capital, your labor, your value with others to create a better bargaining position in the marketplace. It's what people do when they form a partnership, when they start a business, and they both pool their resources together to have a better starting base for their new business, right? Well, that's the same thing when workers do that. We should allow for organizations to form where workers, guilds, unions, these kinds of things, where private entities put themselves together and combine their labor potential to create a better bargaining position. I don't think that should be a requirement, but I certainly think that's a tool that can be used. And like unions here, they're not required, but union electricians do the best work, they're trained the best, because they have a vested interest in that organization of providing the best workers to provide the best wages. And so that's something that I absolutely support. And I think, I think organized labor sometimes becomes this political arm and this political entity, and that's a corruption in itself. And I encourage union members to reject those kind of practices and actually get back to the business of really supporting the workers and not the politicians that say they're going to be supporting the workers. I think that's a better path. But again, private individuals should be able to privately organize their labor, their capital, how they want to, and see how it goes.
Yeah, I've always felt that. I think so many libertarians get that wrong, and I think you're 100% right on that. Because so many of them are anti-union. Like Tremont, that's one of the things he brought up. It was...
I don't know it was Tremont. I don't know. It wasn't Tremont.
Rechtenwald?
Maybe so, yeah.
Anyway, one of them was real... Yeah, it was Rechtenwald. Because they disrupt the market, and they raise prices and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but... Just like you said, your labor is capital as well, and you have a right to negotiate it for a better pay, better benefits, better everything. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's the right of an individual's, your own value, your own worth.
Yeah.
And yeah, we can say that some of these unions are terribly run and have terrible leadership.
Yep.
But that's the matter of the leadership. They pick that leadership, and it's sometimes detrimental to those workers, but they have an option of to organize differently, and so and to pick different leadership. But I can't control those decisions for them because it's not my money, it's not my labor, it's not my capital. That's their job to do that, right? My job is just to do what's best for me, for my community, for my family, for my neighborhood, and hopefully for my business and property, and just hope for the best in the free marketplace.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, what did you I'm curious, what's your background in? I mean, you told us you ran for office, but if you don't mind.
Yeah, my professional background. Yeah. So it's kind of got a blue collar start in the service industry. I did 13 years in the restaurant industry. I started out as a dishwasher, worked my way up to be like a server, line cook, general manager, and then by the end of it, I was a restaurant consultant who helped new entrepreneurs open up restaurants by creating the front of house plan and all that stuff. Basically, was the initial GM before they hired their permanent GM kind of a thing, and then walked away with a consulting fee. So that was a fun job. And then I moved into corporate logistics. So working in the world of international trade, helping to facilitate moving goods from mostly Latin America, Africa, and Western Europe, because that was kind of my East Coast area that I handled. But it showed me how interconnected trade is in the world and how much more peaceful the world is when we're trading with each other. Mm-hmm. Coincidentally, by the way, this is why I don't fear war with China. And we just saw the GOP debate last night where all of them were rattling the saber for war with China for the benefit of the military-industrial complex. I don't play that game because I don't fear war with China, because the truth is our trade is so interconnected with them that if we had a war with China, it would be mutually assured economic destruction on both sides. And the Chinese state cannot afford that, and the United States and the United States government can't afford that. But they rattle that saber for the purposes of getting that military spending passing through Congress. It scares people away from questioning, why do we need these new weapon systems? Why do we need all this stuff? And so I don't play that game because I've actually been in the realm of international business, and I see that trading goods and not bombs with one another is the real way to actually export our values and export the concepts of of free markets and trade around the world, and it breaks down those authoritarian barriers. And so, so I've worked in the restaurant industry, getting right in there with my hands and doing that job, and then I moved into an amazing job Unfortunately, I had to deal with U.S. Customs a lot. That was a lot of my
Yeah,
job
that sucks.
intersected with the U.S. government, and that was not really fun.
Yeah.
But I never let it get to me too much because I was always like, man, if I ever get the chance, this will be definitely different. But I really loved that job because it showed me how amazing trade is,
Speaking of
like in
China,
real
I was,
time.
I was going to ask this later, but the China, what should the U.S.'s policy towards China be? So, like, you've got an authoritarian dictatorship, basically. That is, I mean, we like the world we want to live in isn't the world we actually live in. We actually have a hostile country that is, even though we do trade with them, they are hostile towards the United States. Is they use their economic power, their industrial power to spy on the U.S., steal corporate secrets and military secrets and everything else. So, what should the policy of the U.S. be towards China concerning that? Should we be more like Trump and Biden are, or should we be more lax with them? Or what's your thoughts?
Well, like I said, in terms of the role of the United States military, should you protect ourselves from invasion, and that does include like cyber invasion and stealing of private information from United States citizens, as well as corporate secrets, these kinds of things. So I do believe in having like robust cybersecurity, and in fact, I think if we close some of our military bases overseas, just the savings from that
Yeah.
could afford us having a much more robust cybersecurity within the United States, right? And that doesn't mean spying on individual citizens. That does mean respecting the constitutional ways of law, and respecting people's privacy. But I do think that we could do better in that regard. But as far as how are we going to combat China on the world stage, we do need to continue with trade with China because they have 1 billion new members of the middle class in that country, and as they rise up, they are actually getting less and less satisfied with the authoritarian state, and they are wanting to tear it down brick by brick.
Yep.
And as we continue to export our values, export our goods, export our trade over there, that's really what's going to tear down China is from within. The economy is their economy is on the brink of collapse actually over the period of the
Yeah.
next decade or two if they continue on their current path. And so what we need to be doing is continuing to export our values eastward towards China, because once that inevitable collapse does happen, what's going to come in its place is something that much more resembles a free market system, and that will be to the success of the United States. This is why I don't think we ever have to go to an actual war with China. The war we're fighting with China right now is an economic war of trade, exporting free market values, and continuing to be innovators in the marketplace. Even though China tries to do these things, and of course we do need to protect against state, individual privacy being violated by the Chinese state and this other kind of stuff. But I think what's going to ultimately win is our economy, our amazing worker ethic that's going to bring about the next innovations. And those middle class people in China are going to not stand for the old authoritarian state, and they're going to break it down from within. Just like we saw when Germany fell, when East Germany fell and East Berlin fell, it was quickly adopting those Western market practices that really caused an explosion of jobs and prosperity in the area that we're still seeing today in Germany. So I look forward to seeing that day, but we don't have to hasten that with some sort of military campaign. In fact, I think a military campaign would actually stall that from happening.
Yeah. Would a President Oliver ban Chinese components from being installed in our communication equipment and power infrastructure and things like that?
Well, here's the thing. I'm somebody who doesn't like to step into the free market. I would naturally like not to have to do anything that could provide compromising our military hardware or anything that's involved with the government, right? But individual entities are going to have to make that decision for themselves, and consumers are going to have to decide what they feel is safe in terms of the components that are in the things they buy. But I do believe in absolute transparency. People should know where the components that are in their products are coming from,
Yeah.
whether it's their phone, their cars, or whatever. They should be able to know that and have that easily accessed, I think, in terms of, because it is something that individual consumers worry about. But I don't believe an outright ban is the way to do these things. I do believe that the market will take care of that mostly. But of course, for military hardware, for military components, government computers, government hardware, absolutely. You want to make sure that you're not having foreign entities with the ability to spy on you.
Yeah.
And
I want to bring that up because there was
that's just kind of basic.
There was a thing where they did a report where Huawei was giving away a bunch of really cheap stuff to regional telecommunications companies, but they were really smart about it. They'd give away these components for pennies on the dollar compared to what they'd spend elsewhere, but it was all around military infrastructure. So, or electrical plants, nuclear facilities. So that's the only reason I bring that up, because it's a spy program.
Yeah, it is, and I think as far as like the general public needing to be aware of these kinds of things, I think ultimately, if we do make the public more aware of what's going on here, you're going to start seeing these folks being
agree.
rejected by the marketplace and saying we don't want this kind of spyware in our stuff, and so to reject it.
Yeah, I know. I did that here just recently. I was looking at a like a security camera for my house. I'm watching a video on YouTube of a guy doing a review over it, whatever. And towards the end of the video, he's like, "Hey, everything seems great. This is good price for this camera, but I don't know where any of it's going. There seems like there could potentially be." And because I'm sitting there watching the video, I'm like, "Hey, this could be a good, inexpensive camera." And I'm sitting there watching it, and he kind of goes into that. I'm like, oh, well, that just kind of did it for me. I will not be purchasing. Seems like a good price, but I won't be purchasing that. So just on an individual
we
level.
also do always have to remember. We always have to remember, though, the United States government's always stealing our privacy and our data every single day,
Absolutely.
and they're not exactly a
was
bastion of liberty, right? So we're always being spied upon. That's something that's kind of weird that we've had to adjust to in this world, is this lack of privacy. It's one of the reasons why one of the focuses of my campaign is always about repealing the privacy violations that occurred during 9/11, the post 9/11 kind of ramp up to the war on terror. I still think we need to remove these things. We need to sunset these kind of laws. And I think really we should sunset most legislation so that Congresses of the future have to re-vote on these things. Because I think, if we did that, you would see more people demanding at the ballot level to not have these programs renewed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I completely, I just thought if there's one less thing, when I'm doing this, there's one less thing that I could be spied on. That was my thought. So,
Amazon got
exactly
caught
right.
spying on people with
Who's
their
watching the
Alexa
Watchmen,
and all
so
that
to
crap.
speak?
Was it Amazon? It was one of those companies.
Yeah, one less. So let's kind of jump into the culture war type stuff if you want to. But just we've heard a lot of stuff about doing away with the Department of Education from Libertarians. So kind of where do you stand on that? I mean, I feel like I have a pretty good idea just from knowing and talking to Libertarians, but I'm kind of curious where your stance is.
Yeah, so federally, I would of course want to eliminate the Department of Education, block grant that money back to the states, and ideally, right. I would like to see a total free market voluntarist education system. But recognizing the world that we do live in, people seem pretty comfortable, on the most part, for having some sort of taxation going towards education. I don't think it should go towards a public education model, basically funding the building and funding that system. I believe in funding students, not systems, right? I think that's a better way to transition to a more free market education system, and then ultimately on our way to a full voluntarist education system. I think this is the best pathway to get there, because I think right now, here's what I tell people all the time. I ask people, are you a parent? And they'll raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm a parent. I'll say, well, I bet you unconditionally love your kid. You would fight and you would die for your kid. You would do anything you could for your child. So why do we give the power of education decisions out of your hands and put it in the hands of a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., or even at your state house? Shouldn't that decision be in the hands of you, the greatest advocate for your kid, the person who wants to see your kid succeed, the person who wants to see your kid grow and survive and thrive? That's why we need to decentralize so much of our governance, and particularly education. Shouldn't the parent, in consultation with the student, be deciding what the best school is? Maybe your kid's a really great performer. They're great at music or performing arts. Shouldn't they be able to go to a performing arts school when they want to go to high school? Or maybe your kid is just great at engineering and math and science. Shouldn't they have the chance to go to a STEM school that's down the road that's set up, that a private entity set up instead of a public school system? Or, shouldn't you be able to decide whether your kid wants to go to a standardized school or a Montessori school or be educated at home? Wouldn't it be great if we're funding the students, not systems, for each and every homeschool parent to be given a little bit amount of money to be able to buy the things that they need to provide for their homeschool students? I think this would put such a level playing field in the marketplace of education as compared to what we have now, where we're taking taxpayer money out to fund a public education system. And then they always say, well, if you want to send your kid to private school, you can just do that. It's like, no, you can't. Yeah, but now what you're doing is you're saying you can only send your kid to private school if you're wealthy, or if you have the means to do it beyond the taxes that are already being taken out of your pocket. That's such elitist crap. If you really believe in a competitive education marketplace, fund the students and not the systems. And I think that's the best way to go about this. Though, as president, I can't force that hand, but We've seen it post-COVID
Yeah.
that this has been the movement that we've been seeing across the country in state houses all over, because parents got to see how terrible the public education system was through a Zoom screen during COVID, and they wanted alternatives. They pulled their kids out of the system, and now they're demanding that their taxpayer money be pulled out of that system too and put somewhere where they can see it applied to their children.
Yeah, you can't force the issue, but you can use the bully pulpit to press it for sure.
Absolutely.
So, with all that, I mean, I feel like right now, and I've said this over and over, but I feel like we're at a better spot as libertarians, or the best election that we've ever been. And I've said that the last 3 years now. I think it's the best spot. So, but it also feels like not just were we in those good spots, the last 2 elections, but now we're in those spots and we have some real candidates that are out there.
Sure.
So, and we have people that are wanting to look for another party, another ideology, however you say it. So, what would be your recommendations for someone that's like, hey, I just heard about this libertarian stuff? Where were your recommendations, books or resources for someone to go to learn more about libertarian ideas?
Shoot, it's always funny to me. I can always recommend, like some of the books that I always recommend is Free to Choose by Milton Friedman is a great introductory. It's just an easy to read guide to like free market principles that really leads right into the libertarian philosophy. Road to Serfdom from Hayek is another one that I think is kind of a classic like libertarian tome. Though I do tell people all the time, it's really hard to get people to read these resources, right? I always try to have individual discourse with folks. I encourage people to read a lot of fiction that actually involves anti-authoritarian themes. Like, I encourage young adults to read the Hunger Games novels. It sounds weird, right? But the truth is if you, spoiler alert, by the end of the 3rd book, the main character Katniss realizes that both fascism and communism are terrible, and goes a different individualistic path, right? And so I think for young people, if I want to introduce my teenage nieces to libertarianism, I kind of do it through that. I always tell people, like, if I'm in a libertarian audience of 100 people, I go, okay, how many people have read Liberalism by Mises? And 30 people might raise their hand in a libertarian audience. And they go, how many people here have watched the movie Star Wars? And 100 hands go up, right? It's because fiction sometimes is a way we connect those themes in a way that we don't really realize. So in addition to those books I recommended, read the Hunger Games novels. Watch Star Wars, the original ones, right? The original trilogy.
Not the compromise.
And if you want to get an idea of like the freedom of speech, freedom of expression side of libertarianism, particularly in arts and entertainment, watch South Park. Trey Parker and Matt Stone are some of the greatest libertarian content creators of the last 30 years. And it's because they've been unapologetically in your face, free speech, free expression. And I think it's a testament to those kinds of philosophies. So you can give people the classic books, but I always encourage them to find that libertarian fiction, that anti-authoritarian fiction that exists, because it usually connects. Like, I'm a big X-Men fan because I've always found that the X-Men kind of represent populations that are being shit on by the major governments, like, whether they be racial minorities, LGBT people. I've always found that kind of anti-authoritarian streak in the X-Men, right? And so you can always recommend the big books, but I always find it more fun to recommend the stuff that more people actually read and access.
Yeah, that's great. And being able to
interesting too.
Yeah, that's a great point. But being able to explain that, not just here's why, and that's an awesome point, because you're right. I mean, I've told lots of people about The Creature from Jekyll Island, but I wonder how many have actually read it.
Yeah.
Or whatever the case may be. Some of these books.
Dude, I've given away a bunch of those books. And I doubt anybody's ever read them.
Yeah.
I get books all the time. It makes for great airplane reading, by the way. Libertarians love to hand me books.
Really?
And it is what I'm reading. Like, I just read a book on Waco that Carol Moore gave me out there. I believe in Delaware is where she was when she handed that to me. And so she wrote that book in the 90s about the Branch Davidians and all that good stuff. So I got to read a book on Waco on my flight back.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's always good to read. I mean, we're about a 45-minute drive from Waco right here where we're at. So that one particularly hits home.
Hold on. Let me hold on one second. Right there. There it is. The Davidian Massacre by Carol Moore.
Oh,
She
cool.
wrote this.
Oh, okay.
back in the day,
Cool.
So There it is.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna read that one.
Yeah, I'm always up for a Waco or Ruby Ridge book.
Yeah, I'm on the Alex Jones camp that the FBI purposely murdered those people. So that's just my take on it. Yeah, Alex Jones is a lunatic, but sometimes he's right.
Yeah. Well,
hey, what are we gonna do about this debt, man? What's
your solution for
fix
the national debt?
Yeah, just wave that magic wand.
That's right.
Here's one of the things I will say. And I could say the standard like libertarian in the Fed line, right, which is that libertarian red meat. But here's the thing: most of these voters out there, they don't understand what the Fed is or what the Fed does. Like they're too busy raising their families, living their lives, doing their jobs to really get in the nitty gritty of it. Mm-hmm. But one thing we can communicate to voters is balancing the budget. Yes. Right? Because if we balance the budget, there's no reason to print trillions of dollars a year for deficit spending that devalues our dollar. Mm-hmm. And so it's a concept that really relates back to the individual voter. Also, when we use that language like balance the budget, get ourselves back to fiscal sanity, we had a balanced budget in the 90s. We did in the end of the Clinton terms because the Republicans forced the cuts, right, that needed whatever back when there was actual, and it was a little bit of math, right? It was not exactly budgeted, but we reduced deficits. We got ourselves towards that path, right? And we had an explosion in the middle class. Those things are not unrelated to each other. When people see that the United States economy is actually spending within its means and acting responsibly, businesses feel more comfortable to spend money, lend money, create new businesses. And so right now, we're just continuing to spend, and that's to the detriment of our kids and our grandkids. And it's just something that it's another reason why we got to get these boomer politicians out of office, because they're going to continue that path until the day they die. And frankly, they're not worried about it. They worry about the next financial quarter. I'm more worried about the next quarter century of our economy and how it's going to function for my nephews and nieces to grow up in the economy and actually have a job so they can survive and thrive. And that involves us getting spending under control, balancing the budget, and then continuing to cut government so we can actually pay down the debt over time. Once we get ourselves to a balanced budget, we can then continue to cut all the excesses and pay down the debt. Because when we do that, we put ourselves also on a better world stage with China and these other economies that are emerging. China, India, Brazil. And if we want to be economically competitive on the world stage, we have to be on a better footing than this $33 trillion debt and growing. And so that's the message that I give to every single American family is, isn't it time that the United States government does what you have to do every month and balance the books, spend less than they take in, actually put some money aside for a rainy day kind of a thing? But until we get across to doing that, we're on our way to economic calamity. And it's not going to affect the 80-year-olds who are currently inhabiting the White House and the House and the Senate. It's going to happen to you and me and to our kids. And it's going to lead to a real economic collapse. And if we don't take charge right now, which is why we need to activate the next generation of Liberty voters, we're in real trouble.
Yeah, I pulled it up just yesterday. I was looking at the national debt. And the first number I found, it was like $639 billion was paid for just interest payments for fiscal year 2023. Then I found another number they put it at $710 billion. Then I went to the St. Louis Fed, and the St. Louis Fed put the interest we paid for fiscal year 2023 just on the debt at $981 billion.
Yeah, it's almost $1 trillion just on the interest.
Yeah, that's totally unsustainable. I don't know what these people up in Washington, they just want to keep spending more. We ran a $2 trillion deficit, basically. They claim it's only 1.7. It was really $2 trillion.
But the truth is there's a reason why they're doing this, because they don't concern themselves with the real future. They concern themselves with the next election cycle.
That's it.
And it has to do with two things. One, the lack of term limits. So they don't care. They just care about consolidating their power. So they just continue to spend and give away things because it gets them votes. But then there's also the added the added thing of these people are old. They're not really worried about the future. Like they just aren't. They're worried about the next 10 years max. Right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Like,
and not just that, but they're all insider trading and making millions of dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
They're the rich are getting, when they say the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poor, remember that's also the Washington D.C. elite class out there who are certainly getting richer. And And I don't agree with all the Republican candidates on everything, certainly, but when it was brought up last night that Nikki Haley basically became a millionaire by working for the military-industrial complex, and you wonder now why she's on the debate stage wanting to go to war in Ukraine, wanting to go to war in Israel, wanting to go to war in China. Well, it's because her stock portfolio will benefit really well if we do that. Now it'll kill thousands or possibly millions of people, but what does she care? It makes her richer, right?
Right. That's fucking pathetic. That's so sad. I didn't get to watch that debate, so that's interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it.
Well, it was it was kind of illuminating that even Vivek, who everybody says is anti-war, and he's just very happy to commit to sending troops down to Mexico to fight a drug war, and that's all it was. It was 5 different politicians like seeing where we can send our United States military people to fight and die next. And to me, I think it was just insulting to the men and women in uniform who should really be here defending our homeland, not engaging in adventurism, whether it's south of our border, in the Pacific Ocean, in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe. Our military footprint should be removed from every single continent that isn't North America. And if you don't have a presidential candidate that's willing to say that, then that's not a presidential candidate who is anti-war and who's willing to support peace. Because our job is not to be engaging in military adventurism, empire building, fighting all over the world, creating division and instability all over the world. Like we spent trillions of dollars fighting wars in the Middle East for the last 22 years. Have we seen stability? Have we seen a growth in democracy? Have we seen freedom? No. It looks like to me that we spent 21 years fighting a war in Afghanistan against the Taliban to eventually what? Give the government back to the Taliban. Oh, and with $1 billion worth of military equipment on the ground.
Yeah.
Like,
fantastic.
Make that make sense to me. Because it still hasn't. Not since 2001 has this entire military adventurism made sense to me. And so it's time that we have a candidate who's willing to get on the debate stage. And trust me, if I got in the debate stage with Trump and Biden, and if anybody can do it, it's going to be the hardworking candidate like I am that's going to get it done. We will absolutely expose them for who they are. We will expose this military war state, this military industrial complex for what it is.
Yeah, I'd love to see you on the debate stage. Any libertarian on there with those two idiots. Be fun.
So speaking of sending troops to Mexico or whatever, that's such the wrong way to fix that problem. But where do you stand on? We're here in Texas, so what is your stance on the border stuff we're seeing right now?
Yeah, I tell people all the time there is a real immigration crisis at our southern border, but the crisis is not caused by immigrants. It's caused by lousy government policies with regards to immigration. 99.9% of the people who want to come to this country, proverbially, right, want to come here just to work and put down roots and start a business or get to work on a job or whatever. We should allow the ease for that to happen. We should be able to say you can come through a port of entry in this country as long as you declare yourself to not be sick or really wanted for a major crime that requires extradition. You should be able to come in this country and work. I don't believe that that's going to lead to more crime or this, that, or the other. That is all kind of nativist BS out there. In fact, I've lived amongst immigrant communities, for the last 20 years. I really enjoy them, actually. I think they're great people. They're hardworking folks, and many of them have committed family values. And so I would like to see more of that in this country. Now, what happens when we do ease that immigration for that proverbial 99.9%? Well, that 0.1%, which is traffickers, people who want to bring people into this country for the purposes of labor or sexual exploitation, particularly women and children, which is what we've seen, we can put our law enforcement and our Border Patrol eyeballs right on them and hyper-focus on those actions. But we have to ease the system to have all those peaceful people get out of the way first. And so I'm for Ellis Island-style immigration system. And frankly, I think if you're already here, you should be able to easily walk into a post office, get documentation, and continue living here as a guest worker. And when we do that, we bring tens of millions of people out of the shadows. Because right now, it's so easy for those people to be exploited, either for their job, their labor, or think about this. How many immigrant children out there are being abused by an adult, being an authority figure or somebody else, and they are scared to go tell somebody because they know them or their parents are immigrants and they might get deported? Yep. How many spousal abuse victims can't go to a shelter because they worry that they are an immigrant and they might be deported and separated from their children if it's found out? That's the kind of human exploitation that happens in the current system, and we have to fix it because it is in a crisis mode. And I think when you do that, you're also going to see more seasonal labor. That's one of the things that's prevented by our current immigration system. We used to have a system called the Bracero program, where workers would come, they'd work during the season on the farms, and they would go back. And we would see a lot more of that if we ease the way that people can get in and out. Right now they get here, they don't want to go back because of the difficulty of coming back in next season. And so I think there's definite ways for us to approach immigration, particularly in a way that I think could be done in a bipartisan or tripartisan manner, and get legislation passed to make it where workers can come here and work, and we can really crack down on the crimes of human crimes of exploitation and trafficking at our border, because that's really where the worst of it is, and it's where our law enforcement should be focused.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, George Bush tried doing that during during his administration.
Yep, 2006 it got torpedoed.
Yeah, the Republicans weren't having any part of that. They were like, no, sir, that's not going to happen. It's too bad, because if they'd done it, we wouldn't be having the problems we had now.
Yeah, George Bush was a border governor. He at least understood that issue, right? And that it needed to be addressed. And now we have kicked the can down the road for 25 more years, or for 20 more years, and it's still a problem that needs to be addressed. And we need to have somebody who's willing to address it in a humane, empathic manner that treats immigrants with their inherent human rights that all people are born with, but also recognizes the need for us to have some sort of system that's working. So that we know, that we can easily stop people who are wanting to illegally traffic people in here for the purposes of, abuse. We should be able to do that. We should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
So I have a question. So one of the things on this podcast, I feel like we have a lot of our listeners are probably not libertarian. They're probably some of our episodes are going to be the first time they're exposed to these ideas. So what would you, if you had what would you say to those people on, I mean, other than what all you've said, but is there something that you could convince them?
Yeah. Let me just distill it down into like an elevator pitch, right?
Okay.
And this is what I tell people all the time. Here's the deal. If you are not hurting anybody through your life, if you're just living your life in peace, you don't commit that force, fraud, coercion, theft, these things that we naturally are all against, right? Because they negatively attack other people's rights. If you're just living your life in peace, the government shouldn't have any say in your life. Who you are, how you live, how you express yourself, how you worship, who you love. As long as you're doing so in peace, the government shouldn't really be stepping in. And any interaction you should be having with the government at that point, ideally, should be voluntary. And that's where I think libertarianism falls, is that peace is really the goal here. And I tell people all the time, some people may think us to be selfish, right? Because we concern ourselves with individual rights all the time, and people think, oh, well, you only care about you as the individual. But the truth is, it's actually a very empathetic position, because it's not just my individual rights, it's your individual rights. It's a concept that I call common grace. If you can grant me the common grace to live my life in peace as who I am, and not seek to use the power of government to influence my life to live like yours, I will never, in return, seek to use the power of government to influence your life and control you and make you live a life that's like mine. And I think if we all agreed to that, we would be a more peaceful and prosperous people. And it's what government does to get in the way of that affects us. That's where they sow the seeds of division. It comes from those who are already in power who seek to divide us. Because when we unite around that common grace, that common theme, we break down the walls of authority and we get ourselves back to individual liberty. And I encourage people to look really into our philosophy and see that it is not a selfish philosophy, but a very empathetic philosophy that asks that each and every person be allowed to control their own destiny, and that each and every person be able to live their life in peace, free from violence. And that the only legitimate purpose of government, in my opinion, is to protect and secure the individual liberty of each and every person.
Yeah, that's perfect.
That is
very well said.
Very well said. And I think it not only, because like I said, we probably don't have a podcast full of libertarians, which is the idea behind our podcast, is to expose people to some of these new ideas. I think you also explained your flag there too, as you just did that, because I'm sure that there'll be some. Like I said, we're pretty heavy in Texas, so I'm sure some people would be like, what's going on with the flag, with everything we've seen with CRT and all that kind of stuff. So what you just said kind of nailed that, your flag there as well. So.
Exactly. Don't tread on me as an application that applies to each and every person, no matter who they are, so long as they're living in peace. I ran into a conservative voter in Alabama, and I handed him my business card. And he asked me what my faith was, and I said, "Well, I'm an Episcopal Christian, sir." And he said, "Well, how does your church feel about homosexuals and women in the pulpit?" Which we have gay and female pastors in our churches. And so I explained that, and he started saying, "Well, in my church, this, that, and the other." And I said, "You know what? Just stop right here. How about this? You agree to let me worship and live my faith experience as I choose to live it, and never seek to use, the hand of government to control my religion. And I'll let you live your faith as it is, and I'll never seek to use the hand of government to control your religion. Does that sound like a good deal?" And he said, "Yeah, that is a good deal." I said, "Congratulations. You're a more conservative libertarian. I'm more socially progressive libertarian. And that's okay. But so long as we're not using the force or power of government to force our will upon the other, we're going to live in peace." And he really came away going, "Okay, that makes a lot of sense." And that's the kind of message I want to send to people, is that, you do not have to agree with me or the way I live, or the way I worship, or any of that stuff. And I don't have to agree with you either. But as so long as we're not using violence to try to instill our opinion on one another, that's what we should be against. I'm against all kinds of wars. I'm against military wars. I'm against drug wars. And for the same reason, I'm against culture wars. That's what culture war is trying to use the government to instill your version of culture onto everybody.
Yeah.
I support a cultural free exchange of ideas. Let peaceful people peacefully live, and culture is going to move on its own pace. We don't need the government to push it one way or the other. And that's where I think we need to stand, is ultimately with people has free choice, free expression, and right to make their own decision. That means there's going to be people who live here in this country that might not live in the way you personally approve of. And you can personally be offended all you want. And you can feel free to associate or disassociate with those people. But what we're not going to do is use the force and power and violence, ultimately, that government can provide to instill our will on other people. And that's what libertarianism is at the end of the day. And so you can be as conservative or as progressive or as libertine or as, however you want to live your life.
Yep.
But as long as you're doing it in peace, man, not my business and certainly not the government's.
Love it. I love it. And that's what gets me, the stuff that people are, you're in favor for this now till you're in whatever the government overreach is until it's used against you. And that's what, so I get, man, that nails it. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about that. That's pretty great.
Is there can you put your plug your website, I'm sure, or whatever else you have going on, social media?
Yes. I would not be doing my job as a presidential candidate if I didn't plug how you can help the campaign, how you can join the campaign, and where you can follow the campaign. So if you like what you're hearing today, if you want to get involved in this campaign directly as a donor, supporter, or a volunteer, right now all you have to do is take out your phone, text the name Chase to 21,000, and you'll get right connected to the campaign. So if you just want to pull out your phone, if you're listening to this podcast, you're at the gym right now, pull out your phone and text Chase to 21,000. It'll get you to a link to become a donor supporter right here, right now, or a volunteer today. If you want to check out the website, it's votechaseoliver.com. You can see our press releases, our media, our new ads that we're just putting out. We have a new ad coming out in the next couple weeks, so it'll be really great. It's on the spoiled vote myth that exists out there. And so we're going to be pushing all that stuff out there on votechaseoliver.com. You can see it all there. And of course, if you want to follow the campaign via social media, hit us up on X. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on even TikTok at Chase for Liberty. Look that up. That's where you're going to find us on all those platforms. We want to reach out to you wherever it is that you are. So get involved, join the movement. But again, votechaseoliver.com is the website, or text Chase to 21,000. We'll get you directly connected, and we do need your help as we travel across the country speaking a positive message of liberty that's hopefully going to resonate with that next generation of voters and bring about the next libertarian generation.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Do you have any Texas dates? Anything coming up?
Ooh, I'm going to be making a tour through Texas. Let me pull up my calendar because I'm always terrible with the exact dates. But I'm going to be basically landing in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm going to drive through Arkansas, Louisiana, and then all up through Texas. And so let me just pull out the old calendar here. I don't know if we have everything exactly put down. Let's see.
While you're doing that, I will say whoever does your campaign videos are pretty good. They're pretty dope.
We got some awesome people involved there. I believe I am doing that the first week of December. Where is it? So I fly out to Memphis on the December the 7th, and I drive through. I'll be in Dallas Fort Worth, San Antonio, and then on into up in Louisiana. So that starts on the 8th. I should be driving down to Dallas, and I'll be in Fort Worth on the 9th, San Antonio on the 10th, it looks like, and then heading on out into New Orleans and to relax Louisiana, to knock those 2 states off. So that'll be 2 more states. I've already been to Texas once, but I'll be back again. Just like I was into California once, then I did a swing through several cities. That's what we're doing here. We're going to be in Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, and San Antonio are the 3 major hubs we're trying to hit on this particular swing through. But that'll be in December. And of course, if you do want to stay involved, you can get onto our events tab. It'll tell you everywhere I'm going to be right there at votechaseoliver.com.
All
All
right.
right.
Awesome.
Well, hopefully we'll see you when you're up here in the Metroplex. And thank you for coming on. Thank you for doing all this.
Yeah, thanks, Chase.
Yeah, I'd love
Really
to see
appreciate
it. Let's shake some hands. Let's hang out, have a drink, and enjoy each other's company face to face. But in the meantime, thanks so much for providing me the opportunity to be on the show and to provide a libertarian message out to your listeners. And I hope they get involved in the Libertarian Party of Texas or wherever they're at. We'd love to see it grow.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
man.
sir.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Next time.